From the studios of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans.
How passionate?
So passionate that they would sit up until maybe 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning to see LeBron James make his Laker debut at the Staples Center and witness a very ugly brawl that broke out with Rajon Rondo and Chris Paul and Brandon Ingram. That's how passionate.
And they're going by his past now. His past is catching up to him,
Mm-hmm.
by the way.
Yep.
My name, what?
First off, my name is
Okay.
Jaime Hixson, in case you didn't know.
And my name is Hector Bosa, the hardest, baddest, still the sexiest man on cable access TV, the one that gets all the women and all the ladies and everything you can think of. Why? Because they're attracted to me because I have the hottest show called the Home Invaders Variety Show. And tonight we bring you fair warning on what may happen today, because there's a lot of stupidity going on
Yeah.
when it comes to sports, as we were talking about LeBron James, his debut. The man, does LeBron James ever fight?
Does he ever fight? He's never, ever gotten involved in a fight in the game.
Did he get involved in this one?
Kind of, sort of, because he actually had to pull Chris Paul out of there.
His friend.
One of his best friends. Notice that LeBron was the one that held Chris Paul back from possibly getting pummeled any further by Rajon Rondo. A kid who has had, as you said, a very checkered history in this game. There's a reason why he's bounced around from one team to another ever since he got traded by the Celtics a few years ago.
He's a good player.
He's always been a good
still
player.
A good player.
He's
Don't get
just
him
a
wrong.
real
He's a
wacko.
wild card. He's a real wild card. I mean, look.
Oh, you got the wild part all right.
Do you put him in the Latrell Sprewell category?
Oh,
and
no, not even. Latrell was just a nut.
The Meta World Peace category.
Oh, brother. That's another nut job altogether.
And oh well. I gotta sit down for this one.
It's funny that we
You gotta
mentioned.
raise the camera up.
It's funny that we mentioned these fights that took place in games, because not a lot of fans know this, but 40 years ago,
Yes.
same two teams,
Yeah.
Rockets and Lakers,
That's a big rivalry right there. Rivalry.
very quietly, those two have had some really big games against each other, and a lot of great players have passed through each of those franchises. But 40 years ago, those same two teams, there was this ugly, ugly incident that occurred when Rudy Tomjanovich, remember him?
Yes.
He would go on and coach both teams, although he led the Rockets to a pair of titles. Rudy Tomjanovich literally had his face broken by Kermit Washington, who threw the single biggest roundhouse right that it almost killed him. And it really did almost kill him, because he almost choked on his own blood.
That's a damn shame when something. I mean, you've had Latrell Sprewell choking a coach for whatever reason. I'm not gonna
Because because Coach Carlissimo was hard on him in practice.
Joakim Noah and Jeff Hornacek getting into it, and that story till this day you don't know what really happened, because Joakim Noah said that Jeff Hornacek put his hands on him, and of course he's going to deny this, and so many other players are denying it as well. So, that's a touchy subject right there. But when you see a blatant thing, and how does it happen? And the other thing that really interests me is when the opposing team is trying to stop you from fighting, that's when you want to fight the most, because it is the opposing team. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, if it's your own team, they don't fight. But if it's the opposing team, you'll see a lot more fights, even though they may know the person. If you notice that throughout the years, that you see them push them back and back and back, and all of a sudden there's a melee because, let's say, the Lakers are holding a Celtic, and he's getting so pissed off that they're holding him back because he can't help his friends out. That's where the fight starts there too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Speaking of starting fights, that thing that went down 2 nights ago all got started when Brandon Ingram committed a foul on James Harden, who was trying to drive to the basket. And then after that, Ingram inexplicably pushed Harden, and then Ingram got a technical foul. And then Ingram had the nerve to go after the referee in this game, Jason Phillips. He literally got up in his face, if there is such a thing. Brandon Ingram is 6'10", and Jason Phillips is what, 5'7" or 5'8"?
yes.
And then after that, supposedly that's where the fight between Rondo and Paul started. Supposedly, Rajon Rondo accused Chris Paul of spitting in his face.
Yeah, so...
But when you look at the replay really, really closely, the person that spit in Chris Paul's face was actually Carmelo Anthony by accident.
Yeah.
And then the next thing we know, we see both of them exchanging punches. Then Ingram flies into the melee, throws a punch of his own.
Yeah.
So you know that those 3 guys are going to get suspended. The question is, who's going to get the worst of the suspension?
Now remember the suspension, how it's supposed to be. And that is, if you leave the bench, you automatically get suspended.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's exactly right. And you
Now,
also get fined too.
I'm sure
goes without saying.
I'm sure that some of those teams, I'm wondering, because when it happened to Patrick Ewing, remember that great game where
The
all
playoffs
of us
against
the
the
playoffs, the Heat.
Yeah, the Charlie Ward game.
And all he did was what? Take 3 steps and they suspend. You see,
And that changed the whole series
that's
right there.
a conspiracy right there, because right now you have whole teams going out there and fighting, and then suspended. You went over, suspended. You threw this, suspension. Every one of those people that, unless the rules have changed, they should all get suspended. And if they have to play with 4 guys and forfeit, they should, but they won't do it because the NBA wants the money. Plain,
Precisely.
simple English. They want the money. Now, here's something that'll warm the cockles of your heart.
Mm-hmm.
It's about your buddy, James Dolan.
Oh, brother. He's nobody.
Your
of mine.
buddy, James Dolan, says that he's going to ban Knicks players and Rangers from appearing on Intercom and on WFAN. Why is this? Because I'm just reading Maggie Gray, and this is where I'll say that it'll warm the cockles of your heart, is that in Gray's very personal rant, she called Dolan a vile piece of trash, according to the New York Post.
And so what's her point?
Well, I'll let you continue reading. All I know is that James Dolan is not very shielded. He doesn't have a very hard shield sometimes when it comes to certain things.
Well, unfortunately, this moron and the people at the Garden and the Fan have had a feud with each other that has kind of gone unnoticed in many circles for a long, long time. But this might have been the last straw, seeing Maggie Gray practically rip Dolan and the people at the Garden. So now he decides he's not going to allow any players to do interviews with the Fan whatsoever. First of all, he is not their parent. He doesn't have to ban them from doing anything. If they want to do an interview, so be it.
He's their boss. He's their boss. They got to go by what the boss says. Now,
Well, if that's the case,
here's
then
the
maybe
thing.
they should demand a
And here-
trade from their boss.
Well, here's the thing. Look how Donald Trump praised this particular senator for throwing a newspaper man for doing that nonsense. So please, you.
I don't even want to
and
hear
then
about
he
this man right
suspends.
now. I'm so infuriated with him.
He suspends people that he doesn't like. But freedom of the press. You could only do so much banning before people are gonna say you're either going. It's like the knee. You're either for him or against him. You're either for Kaepernick or against him. If you want to get rid of him and you want to get rid of those senators, then vote. Every vote counts, whether you like it or not. And this is why I hate statistics sometimes, because they'll say that this person, let's say Jaime Hixson, is ahead 25 points and I'm behind 25 points. That's what makes people not want to vote sometimes too. Don't believe the hype. Just go out there and vote and stop complaining. Because most of the people that complain are the ones that don't vote.
What's going to happen if somebody from ESPN New York, where Knicks games are broadcast, decides to go on a full tirade against him in the Garden? Does that mean that he's going to ban his players from doing interviews with ESPN New York as well?
Well, here's the thing. I don't think he can. Can he ban them from interviews? In the locker room, can he ban them from the locker room? I don't know that.
It's him and that stupid media policy that he's had for too long right now.
But look,
some reporter asks a tough question, and then all of a sudden the interview's cut off, and then someone will say, "Well, this interview was never authorized."
But look at Marv Albert. He was trashing the Knicks, and deservedly so.
And he was doing his job too.
He was doing his job, and Dolan didn't like that. But what do you want? At the time,
Dolan didn't like it, so he fired Albert. Then he promoted Mike Breen from the radio to the TV.
Who's a good guy himself.
He's always been a wonderful broadcaster, but he has not been immune to drinking the Kool-Aid from the bosses at MSG in the past. And he's been called out on it, too, by Michael Kay on his radio show.
If a person wants to save his job, a job that you like, you'll kiss a little rear end once in a while. And secondly, the only one that doesn't hold his tongue is Clyde Frazier. But Clyde Frazier has a little class, because he won't come out and say, "Oh, they're garbage," and so forth. He goes, "Oh, their defense is like Swiss cheese." And
exactly.
And that's a soft hit. Dolan doesn't like to get punched.
That's the problem. There's no one out there that's brave enough to throw that knockout punch against him and put him away for good.
Because
this is exactly why there needs to be new ownership at the Garden. But not just for the Knicks, but for the Rangers too.
But right now, that far being said, the Knicks, for what it's worth, they're 1-2. The 2 losses that they had were close.
And to make matters worse, Kevin Knox badly sprained his ankle, so he's going to be gone over a couple of weeks.
He's going to be gone for 2 to 3 weeks. So the Knicks curse has come down again. But if the kid comes back in 2 or 3 weeks, shows a little something, you have something to at least look forward, because at least hasn't touched the team yet. He hasn't done the Carmelo Anthony thing, where he wanted Carmelo Anthony so bad that he traded half the team.
And look what it got him.
And they got him nowhere.
6.5 years. And they were playoff flops 3 times.
And they had a decent team back then, because Timothy Mozgov was a decent player back then.
That was a long time ago.
No,
Hector. Seriously. You need
no,
to move on from this.
Listen.
Timofey Mozgov was a blip in their radar
listen.
over a decade ago.
Here,
it's time to move on from this, please.
Don't get all riled.
No, you already got me riled up. Because every single time we discuss this, you always have to do something to try and
I don't try.
Cover for these guys.
I'm not covering
all of their shortcomings.
No, I'm not.
It's not even supposed to happen.
I'm not covering. That's the whole point. I'm being straight like Switzerland. I'm Switzerland. You're
you
doing
ain't
this.
Even Cuba, man.
You're doing this, or you're either this way or this way. You're not in the middle. Because let me explain something to you. He traded half that team to get one dude. Half the team because he wanted to. Just like
and
George,
what was that? Awful management.
Just like George Steinbrenner used to do back then. When he wanted someone, when he wanted Reggie Jackson, when he wanted someone, he paid. And went
for
over
every
this
Reggie Jackson and
there was a big flop.
Willie Randolph and Chris Chambliss and Lou Piniella that he got. There was always a Steve Kemp, a Jack Clark, a Jimmy Jones.
And he made bonehead maneuvers.
Or so many other players that wound up washing out in the span of a year.
So here's the thing. Again, to be on your side now. Those were some bonehead maneuvers, especially when they wanted to play speedball, small ball, when they had Roy Smalley.
Does the name Andy Hawkins ring a bell?
Andy Hawkins. When he was good, he was good. When he was off, he was terrible. And then they had.
I still remember that no-hitter that he lost 4-0.
Exactly.
Because his outfielders couldn't catch simple pop-ups.
Like I said, how do you, when you're in love with someone, like I said before, at the time, Timothy Mozgov was a decent player, and that team was decent. That's how come
They weren't decent.
Excuse me.
They weren't decent.
Excuse me.
No. They were not even close to being decent.
That's why.
They were about as mediocre and as under average as any team could be. Seriously, man?
Can you let a
decent?
Can you let a person finish?
No, I'm not. Because that decent team that you're talking about wound up getting their butts kicked by the Nets in the first round of the playoffs.
Let me explain.
And what happened after that?
At least
6 years in a row, they embarrassed themselves.
But
all and out embarrassed themselves.
But here's where you get.
And it was under his watch that he signed off on Eddie Curry and Jamal Crawford.
You're right.
And does the name Jerome James ring a bell?
And I agree with you.
There's no decent about it.
But I agree with you. You see, that's my whole point. I am agreeing with you with those signings. So how can you say that I'm not this and I'm not that? No, I agree with what you're saying about those guys.
Because you're also saying that they're good players.
No, I said
decent team.
They were
not even close.
Excuse me. They were a decent team at the time, because remember who the GM was. He didn't want to do that trade, so what did he do? He left.
And who did he bring? Probably the biggest yes man that he could find, Isaiah Thomas. Who all he did was whisper sweet nothings in his ear about how he could make the team better. And what did he get for his efforts? I'm talking about Dolan, Jamal Crawford, Eddie Curry, Steph Marbury, Jerome James, Penny Hardaway, whose knees were shot at the time. Tim Thomas, grossly overrated and a faker and a locker room disruption. It just boggles the mind how any franchise could embarrass themselves and be laughed at for as long as this franchise has been. 9 years in a row. 9 years. This franchise was under 500. And what happened to them? 4 playoff games.
But here's where you look bad.
How am I looking bad just because I'm calling them out?
No. You want to. I'm calling them out too. But here's where you look bad.
How am I looking bad?
You ready? When they make the playoffs, when I say they're going to make the playoffs, and when they did under Mike Whitson, and I said to you, they're going to make the playoffs. No, they're not. They're never going to make the playoffs.
And what happened when they made the playoffs? They wound up getting their butts kicked 3 years in a row.
Wait a minute. The first thing you said, but the first thing that came out of your mouth was that they were never going to make the playoffs, and they did. So eat your hat on that.
No.
Secondly, I agree with you on another thing.
And what did they do when they made the playoffs? Nothing.
Yeah, but you were the first one.
2 years in a row.
You're right.
They were first round and out.
You're right. But the first person that kept on saying, remember what comes out of your mouth, which is, they will not make the playoffs. And what did they do? Make the playoffs. So
how many times in the last 17 years?
Have to eat your
4.
Hat. You have to eat your hat on that.
No.
Because
I will do no such thing because their incompetence and their lousy management is only proving what I have been saying before.
You're right.
As long as that knucklehead is still running the show, they will not do anything.
You're right. But here's the thing.
And nobody wants to call him out on that.
You're right.
They just want to coddle to him just to try and feed his ego.
When they do make the playoffs, instead of going, you know what, at least they made the playoffs. No, it doesn't matter. They got to make the championship, which I agree with you on that.
At least they made the playoffs.
At least they made the playoffs. From a person that kept on saying, they will never make the playoffs. This is what you say. So, calm down.
No.
Calm down because there's no reason for you to get robbed.
No, I will not. Because every single free agent signing, every single draft pick, every single trade has gone nothing but disastrous.
Am I disagreeing?
Totally, completely, utterly against them.
Am I disagreeing with you on that?
Where's Kristaps Porzingis right now?
He's injured.
And why? Because he mangled his knee.
Correct.
And ever since he got drafted almost 4 years ago, not once has he played 80 games in a season.
Exactly. I agree. Is he a good player, though?
That's not the issue.
Oh!
The issue is this guy cannot stay healthy.
You don't want to give him, you see, when he's a good player, when the person's a good player on the team, you don't want to give him credit. Is Kevin Knox a good player?
He's a good player, but he just got here.
Thank you.
He got here
I'm asking.
3 games ago.
Wasn't he good? Wasn't he a good college ball player?
Yes, but you know why he was a good college ball player? Because John Calipari was his coach. You know why he went to college? Kentucky.
Okay. Now
you know how many Kentucky kids have made their way onto NBA rosters, and not one.
Right.
Up until this past summer, has made their way onto a Knick roster.
Let me ask you this.
I've had to see Devin Booker and Jamal Murray and Karl Anthony Towns become stars elsewhere.
Right.
And who do the Knicks want to get for their troubles? Tim Hardaway Jr., who's been in and out of that franchise.
I agree.
A guy who can't play a lick of defense. Did you see that game on Saturday? He wound up getting burned by Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum posted him up, and what happened? He wound up getting a game-winning jumper made over him. So please, do not give me any of this mishmash about whether the Knicks have good players or not.
They do.
If they're such good players, why does the mix look so dreadful?
Don't they have good players individually?
Individually, yes, but
wait.
Individually, yes, but the mix is lousy.
Yeah, so it
is lousy.
Wait a minute. So you're giving them credit. You're actually giving them credit for something.
Crying out loud.
Wow.
You're not looking at the big picture here.
No, I am.
The big picture here is that collectively together as a 15-man unit, they are not getting it done. They had two opportunities to get game-winning shots off, and what happens?
And they did.
One guy missed a 3, and another guy, I don't even know what the hell happened there.
If it would have been another team, you wouldn't be acting like this.
If it was Golden State, I wouldn't be acting like this because
Exactly.
Golden State has players that have played together for at least
You're
5
absolutely right.
years.
I
And
agree
they've
with you.
won 3 titles together.
But you notice how I'm agreeing with you on certain things, right?
I would not be saying this
I'm
about
agreeing with you.
about the Warriors
I'm
or
agreeing
the
with you.
Celtics.
I'm
Those
agreeing
are
with
those teams are the flagship franchises of the NBA.
I am agreeing.
And then you have teams like the two that we have in our neck of the woods, the Knicks and the Nets.
The Nets.
And the Sacramento Kings and the Charlotte Bobcats and the New Orleans Pelicans and the Memphis Grizzlies and the Atlanta Hawks, all of whom are complete train wrecks right now.
Are they rebuilding, some of them, you think?
Brooklyn is definitely rebuilding because they keep on bringing in one new guy after another each year. At least they have a general manager that's trying to put together some kind of plan on what to do to build a team that can be at least interesting.
Do you call that team a team?
Right now, I don't even know what to call them because there's a whole bunch of guys on the roster that are new here, and they're still trying to get to know the offense.
Just like the Knicks.
Exactly like the Knicks.
Right. And teams that are rebuilding, don't you think they go through stages?
Obviously.
Okay. And
But with the Knicks, it's been 17 years.
Yes, but when was the last time? And I've always asked you this. When was the last time that the oldest player was 33 and the average player on that team is between 18 to 25? When was the last time?
That happens year after year.
No,
man.
it doesn't.
That
No, it
happens
doesn't.
year after
No, it does
year,
not.
man.
No, it doesn't. Look at the teams that you've had in the past, and most of them have been over 30. And no, I'll disagree with you on that. No, look at the
Hector,
past.
I'm looking at the past, and we've seen.
They've never rebuilt like this before. But going on,
that's not true. Because
they
if it was true,
they haven't rebuilt like this.
If that's what you say, then obviously you've never heard of the San Antonio Spurs, because the Spurs went through a drastic rebuild over 20 years ago when they got Tim Duncan.
You're right.
And he gave them instant credibility.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Hey, when the Knicks got Patrick Ewing, instant credibility. Hey, it does happen.
It took them 2 years, man.
Listen, for whatever's worth, do I see promise in their core four, let's say, which is Kevin Knox, Porzingis, when he comes.
That's not a core four. They just got together.
Listen.
That's not a core four. Kevin Knox just got here, man, and they haven't even had a chance to work together yet.
The reason why I call them the core four is because those are the ones that are untouchable. They're not going to trade Kevin Knox.
Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson.
Oh, would you trade them?
No.
Okay. So
Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, and Andre Iguodala are the core four, Hector.
Right, but listen to what I'm saying.
Those couple of guys that you just mentioned on the Knicks, they're just a couple of guys.
Yes, according to you. However, those are the guys that I'm mentioning that are supposedly untradeable. Everybody else.
Well, now Porzingis is completely untradeable because he's damaged goods.
Everybody else on the team is tradable. They have said in the past, and they keep on saying it, that those four people, unless it's a hell of a package, unless they're getting somebody fantastic, those are the four that they're keeping. Everybody else is something. And they've gotten some other good ball players. They haven't gotten some bad ball players. Mitch Robinson, he just came up. He just started. Is he bad? No. Is he that good? No, because he just started. Terrer, what's his name? The guy that was a walk-on. that got caught with drugs or whatever in his system supposedly. He's not a bad player.
Are you talking about Trey Burke?
No, not Trey Burke. The other guy with the But what I'm saying is that particular guy that got caught with drugs had college problems with eligibility and all. The guy that they just drafted out of nowhere, he's not a bad player either. They've got a decent team. Do they have a great team? No. They do not have a great team. I could honestly say they do not have the great team. Do the Nets have a great team? No. Do they have a good team? Yes. Do both teams have so far a somewhat foundation? Yes, they do. They have a foundation to start off with. They're not the Sixers. They are not the Celtics. They're not even the Lakers.
They're not even the New Orleans Pelicans, man. At least the New Orleans Pelicans have a franchise player. Neither the Knicks nor the Nets have a franchise player right now.
Oh, great. That's great. Good news. Yeah.
Anyway, moving right along. Well, you already saw what happened in that fight that took place a couple of weekends ago. They still have not handed down suspensions yet. Probably because it happened over the weekend, but word should be coming down shortly from the NBA offices. And just so you know, Kiki Vandeweghe, the ex-Knick player.
Yeah, the other. You want to talk about disasters?
Is now the dean of discipline for the league. At least Kiki Vandeweghe could shoot.
At the time when the Knicks got him, he was terrible. When the Knicks got him, he was terrible because his knee was shot. No, when the Knicks got him,
and his back.
Right, exactly. So he was when the Knicks got someone. Look at what's his name, Mitch Kupchak. The guy he had bad knees. He was a center. He couldn't jump.
He also couldn't be a general manager either.
So I agree with you on these fantastic points because
Kiki Vandeweghe was a decent shooter. I would not degrade his career the way you did just now.
No, when he was on the other team, he was a fantastic player. When he came on the Knicks, he wasn't the greatest player of all times. Trust me.
And what did it cost him for their troubles? Just a second-round pick.
But again, and then the other great savior, Billy Donovan.
Oh,
he was terrible. He looked scared.
I don't know what they were thinking bringing that kid. I think it was just part of it was the fact that he was playing in his hometown too. He grew up on Long Island and he had zero clue what he was doing out there. But that's just a sampling of what's going on in the league right now.
I mean, those are the two particular things.
Now,
but
there is a bright side to this. There were some really, really outstanding games that took place over
Which
the
are
weekend.
they? Which are
one of which
where?
was
football?
Warriors. One of which in the NBA.
In the NBA.
One of which was Warriors and Jazz. And who was it? It was the former Jazz player, Jonas Jerebko, that wound up winning the game with a tip-in at the buzzer. This is why I respect teams like the Warriors and the Celtics.
I respect them too.
Teams that, specifically the Warriors, guys who know how to win games together because they've been through so many important games together. They bring in a newcomer, Jonas Jerebko, who played for the Jazz last year. He's in there. He's practically a role player for them coming off the bench. And what does he do? The final 16 seconds of the game, he winds up getting a tip-in at the buzzer to win it for the Dubs. That's one game. The other game was just last night. Speaking of the Warriors, it was of all people, Willie Hernangomez's brother, Juancho Hernangomez, that got the game-winning blocked shot for the Nuggets against the Warriors last night. And also, Trey Burke, a point guard who has been pretty much a lightning rod for discussion because of his style of play, has a 35-point, 10-assist night for the Hawks last night. But then again, we just got through the first week of the season.
Yeah.
So there is a lot There's a lot of play to try and go through.
But going down football.
Now we can talk about the NFL. We've got 25 minutes left.
Going down football. How? Please.
Yeah, that's what I want to know. How are the Giants this dreadful? How did the Jets get their butts kicked so badly by the Vikings last night?
So, is it true?
How do the Cowboys get called for a snap infraction penalty on a potential game-tying field goal attempt when the guy, all he did was just try and double-clutch the ball so he can get a good grip on it? And what happens? The kicker, who replaced Dan Bailey over the summer for cost-cutting reasons, has a potential game-tying field goal, hit the left post at the buzzer, and the Cowboys lose to the Redskins.
Now, it's a piece of work when...
And speaking of the Giants, they have the Falcons coming up in about 45 minutes.
So let me ask you this. Was Phil Simms right? Get rid of Eli? Or do you stay with him next year?
Next year? Yeah. Well, let's get to next year when next year happens. I'm only thinking about this year right now.
Okay.
And this year...
What does he have to do?
It's simple. Take care of the football. Which means Eli, don't throw interceptions.
Okay.
Don't fumble the ball.
But
try and come up with a better way of gripping the ball if he's under pressure. And if he is under pressure, throw the ball away.
Isn't this a team sport? It's not about the quarterback, because remember, you got the front line that you said before was terrible.
The front line is terrible, and that's putting it nicely.
The front line is terrible, and because of the front line it's terrible. Do you blame Eli or do you blame the front line? Who do you lay the blame more on? Because if Phil Simms is coming out and saying, "Hey, you know what? Get rid of Eli. His days are past," or whatever,
the blame falls on the offensive line. Eli Manning has been sacked over 30 times this season, and that leads the NFL. That is a blatant indictment on that offensive line. They have got to do a better job of blocking people. Sorry, but releasing Eric Flowers while he's in his walk year is not helping matters. What's going to help matters is finding some offensive linemen who know how to block for a change. And all of this is lost because Saquon Barkley has been busting his tail trying to rack up yardage for the Giants and trying to keep them in games this year.
He's been the one true bright spot in all this. And the Jets.
The Jets have been up and down, up and down. After 2 straight wins, a close game in the first half turns into a rout in the second half.
I'm going to do this for you. Ready? Cowboys 17, Redskins 20. What do you think?
Yeah, that was the game that I talked about before, where the Cowboys got called for a controversial false start penalty when the center moved the ball before the snap. I saw the replay. He did nothing wrong. The Cowboys got hosed.
Okay, we have...
And the Cowboys are not that terrible, folks. They're much better than 3-4. The problem is the defense can't stop anybody, and I don't see their defenders getting much of a pass rush against the opposing quarterback.
The Buccaneers versus Falcons. Buccaneers 29, Falcons 34.
That was actually the week before.
Oh, sorry. Oh, boy. But what do you think of those teams right now?
Well, both the Buccaneers and the Falcons are major, major disappointments. The Falcons more so than the Buccaneers, because the Buccaneers have major problems at quarterback. The Falcons have the weapons offensively, but defensively they cannot stop anybody.
Yeah, and that's a damn shame. That's a damn shame.
And speaking of the Buccaneers, they went overtime against the Browns yesterday. The Browns actually made this terrific comeback to send the game into overtime, because the Buccaneers missed a potential game-winning field goal in regulation, but still the Bucs were able to get the game winner in overtime, so at least they're teeter-tottering on being average right now. Right now, they're just a very, very, very average team with a messy quarterback situation.
And you know, it's a very bad thing when you have all these people. I mean, it's scary. I mean, what was the worst game you seen?
You mean aside from that ridiculous Jet game yesterday?
Yeah, what happened there? What happened that it was so bad though? Because I want to hear your opinion on it.
First and foremost, Sam Darnold could not take care of the football. He committed, well, the Jets as a whole committed 4 turnovers offensively. That's number one. Number two, the secondary wound up getting burned really badly by Kirk Cousins. It's really interesting. Minnesota is a tough team to figure out. They were picked to be a Super Bowl contender this year, but they've been running so hot and cold this season. I just don't know what to make of them. I mean, well, part of the problem is Dalvin Cook is not playing. Dalvin Cook has been hurt, and he missed the game yesterday, yet somehow the Vikings were able to overcome his absence and win the game. But if Dalvin Cook is in there to play every game this season, I think the Vikings would have a better shot at maybe winning the Central.
You know, and that's a damn shame. I mean, what was besides the the Cowboys game was kind of a disgrace.
You know what was one of the worst games?
What?
Colts versus Bills. The final score was 32-5.
Oh, the Jacksonville Jaguars. What did you think of them?
Jacksonville's in trouble because benching Blake Bortles is their way of admitting they've got a quarterback problem. And they had to bring in somebody else off the bench to try and come back in this game. They were clueless yesterday.
And it's a shame because Kaepernick is still out there, and he's better than the majority of those team players, and they don't want him because he wants to put a knee down.
And a fight, I think a fight might have broken out in the locker room, in the Jaguars locker room after the game, because there were players that were practically being held back from trying to kill each other.
Oh, great! And the Philly, the place of harmony and love, the Philadelphia Eagles.
And of course, he says that sarcastically. A great win by the Panthers yesterday. They were down 17-0. They looked horrible. That fourth quarter, they just turned everything on.
The Eagles looked horrible.
The Eagles defensively really broke down.
And the
Panthers just got a wonderful performance by Cam Newton, and because of that, now the Panthers are still in the race for the NFC South.
You know what? I'm gonna do something with you. I want to try something with you. You ready? Atlanta Falcons versus New York Giants.
That's tonight.
Who do you pick to win and how?
Quite frankly, if there is even such a thing, technically Atlanta is the better team. They're twice as better at quarterback. I think at running back I think they're maybe a smidge better than what the Giants have right now. Receivers wise, they both have world-class receiving duos. Of course, the Falcons have Julio Jones,
right,
and the Giants have Odell Beckham Jr. and Sterling Sharp. But defensively is going to be a major problem for the G-men. I think the Falcons, even though they've been a disappointment, I think they might have just enough to overcome the Giants tonight. Not only that, the Giants have had major problems recently playing under the dome in Atlanta.
Here we go. I think this is for next week. Houston Texans versus Miami Dolphins.
That is going to be such... Let me see what we have over here.
Is it a horror? Is it a horror that they're playing, or is it
Jacksonville? Jacksonville. Houston versus Miami is taking place this coming Thursday night. This is a huge game for both teams when you think about it, because they're both trying to make their mark in the playoff race. Houston wants to make their mark in the AFC South, especially in an AFC South that has Jacksonville and Tennessee, two other teams that are right there,
right,
and Indianapolis, which is just an embarrassment. While Miami has been really up and down this season. They won their first 3 games. Now I think they've lost 3 of their last 4. We don't know what Dolphin team is going to show up that Thursday night.
Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Philadelphia Eagles.
Jaguars and Eagles coming up.
Yes.
Let's see. This is going to be, well, when you think about it, this has all Eagles written all over it because
considering what they did this Sunday.
Considering the disappointing loss that they had last night, they're going to try and take it out on somebody. Not only that, but Philly's 10 times better than what Jacksonville has at quarterback. Not only that, but Leonard Fournette cannot stay healthy, and Jay Ajayi has been the missing link that the Eagles have been looking for at running back. I like the Eagles in this one.
And you got the Chicago Bears, who are in first place still.
The Bears are hosting the Jets next weekend.
The Bears.
And the Bears, even though they got toasted defensively, well, let's face facts. I got to call a spade here. Mitch Trubisky is looking so much better taking the snaps from center. Yesterday was a really putrid performance defensively by the Bears, getting toasted 38 points by the Patriots. I mean, it was close, but at the same time, the Patriots are exactly who we know them to be, an annual Super Bowl contender. Now the Bears are going to be going up against a step down in competitive class in the Jets. This has Bears victory written all over it.
Panthers versus Ravens.
Another important game for both of these teams. And the Ravens had a really, really bad loss yesterday, mostly because Justin Tucker missed his first extra point of his career, and that wound up being the difference in the game in their loss to the Saints.
Right. And then you got the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Denver Broncos. Considering what they did this Sunday, how do you compare those two, considering what they did this Sunday and next Sunday?
I think Denver is really solid defensively. I also think that they might have something at quarterback with the former Vikings quarterback, which is Case Keenum. But right now, Kansas City might be the best team in the AFC, which is saying a lot considering the Patriots are right there with them. Kansas City is just smoking with a young quarterback who has been such a breath of fresh air for that team and for that sport, too. He's a really delightful kid. I mentioned this before, but his father is the former Major League pitcher, Pat Mahomes Sr., who pitched briefly for the Mets many years ago. In fact, he pitched for their pennant team in 2000 when they played the Yankees.
Detroit Lions versus Seattle Seahawks. How do you compare them from this Sunday till...
Lions had a bye week. The Seahawks, I think they had a bye week as well. This is a critical game for both teams. I think more critical for the Lions than for the Seahawks.
They're both 3-3. They're both 3-3.
Mm-hmm. The Lions are still trying to make a name of themselves right now. The Seahawks, they still want to prove that they can be a contender. I still think they are a contender because Russell Wilson is still taking the snaps from center. But defensively is going to be a real chore for them because in spite of the fact that the Lions are very, very difficult to figure out, they do have weapons offensively, specifically Matthew Stafford at quarterback. And I think this could be the kind of game that could come down to the wire.
Arizona Cardinals versus San Francisco 49ers. What do you think? Oh, a snoozer? Comparing them to this Sunday?
Precisely. The Cardinals stink. The 49ers, now that Jimmy Garoppolo tore up his knee and is out for the rest of the season,
they're both 1-6.
They stink as well.
They're both 1-6.
I wouldn't be surprised if I saw this game end in a tie, to be honest with you.
Oh, geez. Los Angeles Rams versus the Green Bay Packers. How do you compare from Sunday to Sunday?
I said that the Chiefs were the best team in the AFC. The Rams are the best team in football right now. Yeah. They've got it going on at quarterback with Jared Goff, at running back with Todd Gurley, at receiver with Brandon Cooks. Defensively, they're very, very underrated in my eyes. As for Green Bay, what is there to say about Green Bay? Aaron Rodgers has single-handedly carried that team this season. And I think the Packers have a chance to deal the Rams their first loss of the year.
Is it because he's got good running backs?
The running game is...
Or they got good receivers?
It's his receivers. He's got a really solid crop of receivers that he can throw the ball to. Plus, their running game is...
If you had to compare
it's
them...
good. I mean, they don't have a franchise type of player to go
Right.
to, but it is a good compliment for Rodgers.
If you had to compare him to the Giants, because since there's a comparison there where you have Eli Manning, who doesn't have a good front line,
Mm-hmm.
but he's not carrying the team either.
Mm-hmm.
And you got this guy carrying the team, even though he really doesn't have anybody either, right? So how do you compare both of them? What is it that he's doing that Manning's not doing?
Well, it's a matter of skill set. Whereas Eli is painfully slow of foot, Aaron Rodgers is a lot more athletic, and he keeps plays alive by running with the ball to escape the rush.
And the Minnesota Vikings versus the New Orleans Saints. Compare them this Sunday.
That is going to be really good.
How did they do this Sunday?
We mentioned the Vikings before.
Right.
The Vikings practically had their way with the Jets in the second half.
And
the Saints got lucky because it took a missed extra point to make it a 1-point game. But the scoreboard says they're lucky, but you look at that team, the Saints are just dangerous. Drew Brees is playing the best football of his entire career. He's now the league's all-time leading passer. He's thrown for over 70,000 yards for his career, and he's got a really good running back to work with, Mark Ingram the second, and also a really solid core of receivers, a very good tight end. I think offensively, Brees is working with his strongest crop of players that he's worked with probably since his Super Bowl year almost a decade ago, and that's really saying a lot. More importantly, though, the Saints are better defensively. They've got more quickness. They're putting more of a rush to the quarterback, and I think this weekend the difference is going to be defensively because the Saints have a lot more quickness defensively than the Vikings do, and you have to look at the difference at quarterback. Case Keenum isn't there to be throwing miracle passes anymore. It's Kirk Cousins this time. Stephon Diggs is still there. But just like last year's playoff matchup where Diggs caught that miracle pass and won the game to send them to the NFC title game, this is going to be a totally different perspective. Yeah. I like the Saints in this one.
It's I'll tell you, it's something else. But, now let's go to hockey for a minute because the Anaheim Ducks, you got the Anaheim Ducks going in alphabetical order, the Anaheim Ducks and the Arizona Coyotes.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Well,
so far,
it's practically so far so good for the Coyotes. At least they're working with some really, really good young players this time, and something tells me that you might be seeing them knock on the playoff door in the next couple of years. As far as Anaheim is strictly building to try and win now. And over the weekend, they had a really great ceremony for their former star wing, Paul Kariya. They wound up retiring his number over the weekend.
Boston Bruins and the Buffalo Sabres.
Buffalo is dreadful. They're still trying to do a youth movement. Boston, I can tell you right now, I hate to say this, but I think they might be on the downside of the franchise's long-term stability. They're working with some much older players this time. It's critical that they try and draft well within the next year or two.
Calgary Flames, the Carolina Hurricanes, Chicago Blackhawks, the Colorado Avalanche, and the Columbus Blue Jacks.
Calgary was in town last night because they wound up playing the Rangers at the Garden. Unfortunately, the Rangers really stubbed their toe very badly, losing 5-1.
Do we believe the hype with the Rangers as well?
No.
Do we believe
the Rangers are trying to the Rangers are trying to build with some young guys, which they should have been doing a long time ago. but I think it might be too little too late for them. At least some of these kids have a little bit of promise. As for the Flames, Johnny Gaudreau, who they wound up acquiring over the summer,
2 minutes left,
had a fantastic game last night. Wound up getting a couple of points for the Flames, and something tells me they're going to be in the running for the division title this year.
Do we believe the hype for the Islanders and the Devils too at this point in time, or no?
I would hold off on the Devils a little bit because after their 4-0 start, they've stumbled a little bit. As for the Islanders, they're bringing in some really decent young players to go with the likes of guys like Matthew Barzal and Cal Clutterbuck, and also a couple of the other guys that they have. And also, this is a really interesting year for the Islanders because they're going to be splitting their home games between Brooklyn and NYCB Live, which is also known as the Nassau Coliseum.
Is that good?
Oh, yeah, it's really good. It's great for the fans because they get to sell out the 13,000-seat Coliseum now. It's not going to be good for the guys that are waiting in line to go to the bathroom because the main complaint has been the long lines at the bathrooms.
So you would say that smaller is not better, but bigger is better, but it all depends on the team as well, because you have a lot of great teams with it's just too funny how things go sometimes, because even what was funny, let me ask you something. Getting off topic for a minute. WWE is going to Saudi Arabia.
Yes. And they're supposed to have the first all women's pay-per-view coming up, which is
Evolution. But what do you think of, should they go to Saudi Arabia after what happened to that journalist, or should they just go and try to break ground, as some people are saying?
If it were up to me, I would not make the trip to Saudi Arabia. Things are just way too dangerous over there. And especially after what happened to that poor man, trying to prepare for his wedding. Now I'm hearing that the monarch of Saudi Arabia might be behind the murder. There's no working with a country like that.
So that's what we have so far. So you say no, JBL says yes because you're opening and being innovative and so on.
You know why he would say that? Because he's the rich guy. The rich always want to work with the rich.
Look who you're working with. You're working with greatness over here.
I'm talking about financial riches, genius.
I'm financially rich.
Not like Richie Rich.
Yeah, well, nobody's like Richie Rich. I mean, Jesus, come on now. But, isn't it grand? Oh, did you hear the latest also? When Fox wants them to be more serious, they want them to cut down on the clowning around.
So basically,
Fox, who brought them for, I forgot which year, but they're saying that they want, let's say, R-Truth, they want the skits to come down and they want more realism, more seriousness.
It's about time somebody decided to make a point about that, and I think it's great. So hopefully we can cut down on the mic time and have a little bit more competition in the ring.
Well, if I still think it's McMahon, because he liked those big boys and he doesn't know what to do with Bobby Lashley sometimes and all that other good stuff. And when you have fans pushing for a couple of particular guys, like Braun Strowman should not be on TV all the time. Certain people should not be on all the time. I mean, Andre the Giant was the biggest thing in the world because he wasn't on all the time. And Brock Lesnar wasn't on all the time. But ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, my name is Hector Bosa. I am the hardest, baddest, sexiest man on cable access TV. If you want to see my show, go to homeinvadersrightshow.com and go to channel 34 on Sundays, 11 p.m. when it's showed.
Before we end the broadcast, we want to send our best wishes to our dear friend Rosanna Robertson,
Yes.
who underwent a very major surgery earlier today.
Yes.
We certainly hope that she makes a very, very speedy recovery.
Yes.
I'm
prayers
Jaime
go.
Hixson.
I'm Hector Bosa.
We hope to see you next time. And by the way, episode 500's coming up, so we hope you'll join us.
So
Good night, everyone.
We're going to have a 2-hour special.